reason that I started this podcast was to demonstrate sport as a vehicle for change. In your own words, how would you describe the power of sport and what it means to you?
It's just such a method and a technique that we can use to express, ourselves and make ourselves feel better and find positivity in what we do and to find escape and in refuge in any physical activity you can think of. So yeah, it's probably same for me, same for everything, same as everyone else out there. It's just a way to escape, basically.
And what role would you say that sport has played in your life growing up?
Quite a lot. Definitely shaped me my whole life from a very young age. Always been into every sport, going from tennis mainly as a young age, but swimming, basketball, everything going. Ever since I could be part of a school club, I've been part of something, multiple things, and it's just gone from there really.
Yeah, and so one of the things we mentioned in the intro there is that at the age of 16, you climbed Kilimanjaro, and
Yeah,
at the age of 18, you climbed Everest, which basecamp. But they're
yeah.
two big achievements. What was it that kind of drove you to do that?
I don't know, like ever since I can remember, just being a bit of a young mad boy with ADHD, I was just outdoors 24/7. It was one of them, the lads who you'd be out for until the mum called you in and you were covered in dirt and you were always late and it was dark and you were just making dens, making dens with your friends until God knows what time, climbing trees. And it just all started from there, I think, just the instant love for out there and adventure. And it just spiraled from there, basically, from throughout the years.
Perfect. And one of the things that's cropped up in interviews that I've seen a lot that you've mentioned is that life is quite short. Do you think that's reflective of your attitude on life and why you've decided to take part in many of these adventures?
Yeah, definitely more so. As you grow up and you experience life and you see things, especially like loved ones. My dad dying at a young age, it reinforces that extra reason of why you need to be out there and doing it, and because every day could be your last, and it sounds cliche, but it's just so true. So yeah, just have to live every day as if it is your last.
Yeah. And did your dad share that kind of that same adventurous spirit that
I
you
think so.
share?
We were he's very different to me in a way. He was never kind of the kind of sporty at all. Just the kind of very much grew up on a farm, driving a tractor from the age of 5, driving a combine harvester by the age of 6, but very much lived life to 100 mile an hour for his whole life, in a different sense. Obviously, expressing it in his own way, massive in travelling, and so very much me, but just channeled in a different way. And he would have definitely found me very similar to himself, I think.
And so you took all of this energy and you channeled it and you
Yes.
joined the Marines. Do you think that helped give you structure in your life, but also the adventure that you were looking for?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped more. It's the mindset that's needed for it is there, but it gets honed when you join the military, and it really helped scratch all them itches that I wanted to do growing up. The discipline and the order it helps instill in you, obviously, is so important, and it gives such a great foundation to give you the tools needed to be able to achieve. And also, just directly, I wouldn't have done anything I've done the last 3 years since leaving the Marines if it hadn't been for the amazing time that I'd had in there and the experiences I've had and the great people within it, good and bad. It's not all good, but even to everyone, even to all the bad, thank you very much.
So it sounds like it very much laid the foundations for everything that was to come and became a little bit of a
Definitely.
blueprint in some
Yeah.
respects. What do you think that you've taken forward from your experience in the Marines that you now carry through to the challenges that you're taking part in?
Most importantly, it's the roles and mostly the values that you get taught, which are instilled in you, which is most importantly things like cheerfulness in the face of adversity, which I go on about a lot, which is obviously very not cheesy one because it's so true. Courage, but mostly being able to smile and just get through anything, no matter how hard it is. Learning that pain is temporary, learning that it's only pain. There's a very famous sign down at the training centre that says, it's only pain. 500 meters to go, and it's just that same theory. It just applies, and the most important lesson learned is, just with a bit of hard work and the right mindset, no matter what it is, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whatever adversity it is, it's going to end. And that is the main lesson that I would want anyone to take from anything, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and the glass is always half full, it's never half empty.
Yeah, I think there's also that famous saying that this too shall pass, which I think is a very similar ethos to what you're
Exactly,
describing
yeah,
there.
exact same, but yeah.
So you spent, how long was it that you spent in the Marines?
Only 5.5 years, yeah, not too long, but enough time to have some amazing experiences. Me being me, I was very, very kind of loud, wouldn't stop talking, proactive, but as in a good way. So I managed to squeeze a heck of a lot into the 5.5 years, more than a lot of people do in a whole career. So it was amazing, and it's just kind of the luck of the draw when you join. There's not always going to be lots of things going on, which is I'm thankful for. Obviously, but it's all about just making the most of the time you have. So it was great. Yeah, I loved it. Always asking about this, that, and this trip, and managed to get myself on lots of great experiences whilst I was in.
And then after you left the Marines, you obviously left this incredibly structured environment. Did that accelerate your desire to continue and have even more adventure?
I think so. Yeah, just the kind of high tempo that you have for that long. That combined with my natural kind of personality, just I couldn't sit around for too long. And that's where it all led to. Within 6 months of leaving, that's where kind of the first adventure began. And yeah, it all came from that, from the time in the Marines.
So you leave the Royal Marines, and all of a sudden you are rowing an ocean, which is
Yeah,
a very small
completely
feat by
unplanned.
itself.
Yeah, it was great fun. Yeah, completely unplanned, completely unexpected. I was just working security with a company, a great friend of mine from Black Honest Concepts, they're called, and a friend of mine within the company just turned around and said he had a mutual friend who was on a team doing it, and they needed someone, I think, and they just said, "How would you feel about rowing across an ocean?" And I love the ocean, but the actual concept and obviously the idea of ocean rowing, which is a very niche sport, it's never even occurred to me. And so within like a month, I say, hell yeah, and I was signed up, and just long story short, yeah, through a few different circumstances, within 6 months, having never rowed before, we rowed across the Atlantic.
Wow. So yeah, just literally thrown in at the deep end. I was interviewed another guest who rode the Atlantic, and she was saying that some people spend upwards of 3 years planning for an
Yeah,
expedition like this, and yeah, to be able to be thrown in at what is almost last minute
very
and
much
do
so. Yeah,
incredibly well.
with 6 months to go, it was very lucky. I was just fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, and had been asked if I wanted to do it. And yeah, it was very interesting to the point of like the team. We hadn't even met until we landed in the Canary Islands, like 2 weeks before rowing. So it
Oh,
was interesting. Having only ever been out on the boat once for 6 hours in Plymouth Harbour, that was it. And obviously many 10k sessions on the concept rower in the gym, but nothing gets you nothing can prepare you. As anyone that's done it will tell you, no amount of training can help you. But yeah, it was literally just thrown in the deep end, and it was amazing.
and on something that's so heavily reliant on teamwork, when you've just been thrown together at the last minute, what was that journey like?
Actually, ironically, I think it served. We all said this in the team. Well, not only did because there was four in total, two rowing at a time, standard group of team of four on a 5 metre boat. Three of us were all Marines, one ex, and well, to be fair, me and him were just two ex, and one was actually still serving at the time, I think. And the other guy was also, who's now actually an officer in the Navy, but he was in the Merchant Navy, so very much kind of been in that environment before. We knew instantly that we would be fine because we have that kind of understanding and that camaraderie. But it's actually, we found it probably actually better in a way because if you go to do something like this, you imagine being on a 5 metre boat where you can't move for 7 weeks with your best friend or your loved one. Within 2 minutes, if you started to get pissed off with each other, you can imagine you'd snap in an instant, and you'd be like, you'd be swearing and effing and blinding. But obviously, if you don't know someone very well, very smart, you kind of learn to bite your tongue. So we went through the whole thing with hardly anything crazy, nothing, little harmless things, but no major arguments. It was so funny. We had a chart in the cabin. It was called the flash cabin. A flash being when you've a military term for when you've had an outburst of anger, basically. So everyone had their name of a tally, and every time they had a flash, every time they had a reaction, they'd get the name on the tally, and then at the end they had to buy the beers. Basically, it was great.
That's a really good that's a very good way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. You just know, don't shout, no matter how bad the weather is, no matter how bad you feel, because you don't want to be buying the beers.
Yeah, and when you think back to this challenge, what memories really stick out in your mind?
Oh, so many. I mean, to give you the highlight of both. So, the by far the best moment was probably about a week in, probably about 500 miles from shore, off the west coast of Africa, obviously. Um, it was just like glass, as I'm sure people you've heard before, but it really was not even a ripple. It was like rowing on glass, and we had the bioluminescence around us, and every single time the oars touched the water, it would just be a light show of green, blue, bright orange flashing lights. And then we had a pod of dolphins, about a good like 20 dolphins join us for about 2 hours. And it was just surrounded by these dolphins swimming in perfect pairs, like underneath the boat, just leaving trails of flashing golden blue and green lights behind them. And we had like the classical piano playing on the Bluetooth speakers on the boat, and it was obviously just the calmest you've ever seen. And stars so bright above that it literally, the shooting stars turned night to day for like 10 seconds. It was that kind of surreal. The only thing that comes close, if you think about it, is if you've seen The Life of Pi. That's kind of the only thing, The Life of Pi is the only thing that kind of compares, in my mind. So that was probably the highlight. And then equally, the opposite to that is sometimes it can be like the opposite from glass. Sometimes it can be obviously very bad conditions, massive swells. At one time it was obviously very hot, but at the same time, massive 20-foot swells, 30-foot swells. So bad that we obviously, for like 2 or 3 days, we had to have the cabins closed. You couldn't normally you could have the tiny little hatch open a little bit just to allow a breeze in, but every time you'd come off, say for your 3 hours rest, you'd have to go into the hole, lock yourself in, and basically, and like it just became it was literally a sauna. You felt like you couldn't even move. If you moved to even eat, you would be obviously like just feeling like you're about to pass out because it was that hot and that uncomfortable. But you couldn't physically open the hatches because it was that rough out there that it would flood, and obviously then your risk can capsize, and so you have to be very strict with your drills. And so that was the worst one when we had to go, through a couple of days of that, and it was just days of praying. Let's just hope this ends. Let's just hope this ends. So yeah, high. That's the high, and probably the high and the low.
And you spent so long at sea. It was a much more simple life. And you're with 4 people on the boat in the middle of the Atlantic. How did you find reintegrating back into society, and what did you take away from the row?
It's a very good question. I mean, 7 weeks is a long enough time, obviously, to really appreciate. Mainly, the main thing you take away is the same reason why I love all the expeditions, is it kind of disconnects you from reality, and it disconnects you from the simple pleasures and the things that everyone takes for granted. So it was very easy to integrate back in, after 2 or 3 days of learning how to walk again. It was amazing, because you realise just a hot shower, a burger, a beer, it allows you to just absolutely see the magic in the little things, which is so important that everyone loses just in our society today, just in their own little world of, So that's the main thing I took away from it, and as with all of them, is definitely that aspect.
And so your adventures still continue. You've actually just been swimming up in the Lake District and
Yeah.
became the first person to run and swim every lake back to back.
Yeah, so in training for the big expedition, which I'm sure we'll touch on, I just thought it would be a great idea to go up to the lakes and swim all of them back to back and run in between. And it turned into a nice but horrible week and an amazing adventure. Yeah.
Yeah. How did it go?
As kind of as I expected, it was about as horrible as I'd expect, but it was even more rewarding. Great training with the cold water, no wetsuit, and getting stuck in, and meeting some amazing people, like making a new, like, really close friend who was my kayaker, ex Team GB kayaker called Tom Brady. Like just even with him and having the team around me, the producers, just having a little bubble of amazing people, and just getting out there and just enjoying the views every single time you take a breath. It was really something. It feels like it was years ago that I've done it already, but it was one of the best, definitely one of the best weeks of my life.
Yeah, I saw on your socials that you even rescued someone from the almost
Yeah,
the
very common. It happens all the time. It just so happens we were in the right place at the right time. I've done it quite a few times, but this time, luckily, so one of the big mountain ridges, the big mountain passes that we had to go over to get to the lakes. I was with a friend, and obviously the cloud was in. It was obviously really bad. You couldn't see more than 3 to 5 meters in front of you, and we were on the track. And luckily, I was not on my own, because this is the only section of the whole week where I had a friend join me for one of the sections running over the mountains to get to the next lake. And luckily, because we were together and we were talking, this lady heard us. She was about 50 meters off the pass, and we just heard someone screaming, "Help, help!" And luckily we heard her, because if I'd been on my own, she would not have seen me. No, not a chance in hell would she have even known I was there or known where we were. So yeah, it was fine. Yeah, absolutely. Got over to her. She was on the phone to Mountain Rescue. Told them and told her that she's absolutely fine, and we'd get her down. And she just joined us for the rest of the way down. It was lovely. Bless her. It was nice to I'm thankful that we were there to, because I've been in that situation myself on Ben Nevis and a couple of times on mountains. And when that it's a horrible feeling when that panic sets in, when you're lost and you don't know where you are and it's cold, and you can't see anything. So it was nice, just nice to help.
Yeah, and how long did it take you to do the run and the swim of the lakes back
A
to
week.
back?
Yeah, a week. Saturday to Saturday. Started on Saturday, finished on Saturday. Yeah. In my head, I could have done it quicker, but as with every expedition, like when I cycled across America 18 months ago, to the expedition coming up, I don't care for doing like 16-hour days of physical exertion to kill myself. Not that I know I'm not capable, but because life is about the journey. These adventures, these things that I do are about the journey. So a week in my head, I knew it would be a tough challenge. You're talking at least 1 or 2 lakes every day with at least half a marathon as well. So you're talking 6 to 8 kilometers of swimming and at least a half a marathon every day on average for a week straight. So I knew it would be tough, but I knew for me it would be doable, where I could still enjoy it in a sense, if that makes sense, rather than head down absolutely in a world of pain to the point where you can't even enjoy, because life's about enjoying it at the same time. I could actually look at the mountains around me and appreciate it, and it was that perfect kind of medium. So yeah, for me it was the perfect amount of time. Could have taken longer, could have taken even more rest. I could have had a day off, but yeah, chose not to even have a day off, just to do it, as get the job done as quickly as possible, but to enjoy life at the same time.
Yeah, amazing. And this is all in preparation for a big challenge that you're about to undertake. What is that challenge?
So in 2.5 weeks it starts. It's called Limitless, 12,000 k to Everest. So it's a 12,000 k triathlon, basically, from the shores of England to the top of the world. So swimming across the English Channel, and then cycling from France, 10,000 kilometers from France to sea level in India, and then ditching the bike and going on foot from India, 1,300 k, running, hiking, and climbing to the top of Everest in the longest climb of Everest in history, and the first ever triathlon to the top of the world.
So that's just 2 Guinness Book of World Records that you're trying to capture just for the thrill.
I don't even care about it becoming an official record. The story's going to be out there, and as long as I'm helping people and I'm doing it for me, it's great. I've actually had feedback from Guinness, so they've basically said it's too big to even make it official, if that makes sense. Because if you go onto the Guinness record now, for the website, for example, a big inspiration of mine is a guy who climbed it in 1996 or 98. He cycled from his front door in Sweden to Everest, climbed it with no help, and then cycled home. But that's
Oh
still the
wow.
current longest record. But it actually has on there, not this record is not applicable to apply to break. So it is what it is. When I first thought this up, the idea came to my head. The idea came to me during the row across the Atlantic. So that's where it came to me. And when I thought about it, I had no care about it being big or becoming like as big as it has. It was just another amazing adventure that I wanted to tick off in my head, from a childhood dream, and just combine some other things to make it something really cool. So for me, it's just an added bonus that it breaks records, and it helps. It helps obviously us raise money for the amazing charity, and it just makes it all a bit more, gives it a bit more of a logo.
Yeah, and what charity is it that you're raising money for?
It's all for a small non-profit organisation called SAVSIM, so SAVSIM. It stands for Savora Simul, which is saving together in Latin, based out of London. So they've only been operating for a few years, but they combine two of my biggest passions, which is like mental health and veteran care, and wildlife conservation and anti-poaching. I'm a massive animal lover. Before I joined the Marines, I worked in zoos. I have a diploma in zoology and animal care. So I came across them randomly, and they've made a mental health course using animals and nature to treat PTSD in people with other difficulties, not just military but service people, like, and also police, for example. So anyone can apply, and so at the moment, twice a year they run a course completely funded at where people will go and literally live and sleep on the zoo for a week and do everything from therapy, yoga, working with the animals, just basically to help them. And but also they use these skills of these veterans by veterans in transition. They use their skills, obviously a lot of useful skills when it comes to anti-poaching and wildlife conservation. They use these skills by sending them to places like Africa and training the rangers and using these skills to help the fight in animal conservation and anti-poaching.
It's amazing. It's a very noble cause. Have you got a target that you're aiming to raise through this expedition?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I can. I never really had one before, but now with the kind of support and the amazing team I have around me, I mean, it would be great to raise 500,000. That would be an amazing target. We'll see what happens. As I say, I have such an amazing team around me now, and if it's possible, I just want to get as much as I can. Obviously, even if it was 1,000, that would be amazing. But hopefully, we can smash past that. And obviously, the last time my team did this, they raised that. But obviously, the stuff they did, they raised over 1 million. So, and they reckon this has the potential to do the same. So we're just hoping to get the job done and to help as many people as we can.
Yeah, and if people want to find out more about your project or they want to donate, where can they head to?
Everything is just good. It's centralised on the Instagram page. So the link to the Give Star, the link to the Fund Me page is on the bio, and it's just _ Mitch Hutch. So it's just my name _ Mitch Hutch, and that's where it will be every single day. Professional daily updates, YouTube channel, everything from the same amazing team who made Project Africa with the hardest geezer. So it's going to be some incredible footage.
Amazing. And I have one question here: is why did you call it Limitless? Where did that come from?
It just kind of, I think, resonates with the whole kind of reason of why I'm doing it, and it just popped into my head once when I was on a night shift. What can I call it? And it's Limitless 12,000 k to Everest, because it's just to prove the other message of this. The other reason is to show that you are limitless as long as you believe you can do it. Simple as that. I'm a very average guy, if that makes sense. I'm not an extreme ultra runner. I'm not an extreme Olympic swimmer or long distance. I'm average at everything, and I'm just here to show that I quit work 6 months ago full time just to focus on this and make this reality. I've trained my absolute arse off for 2 years just to show that with the right mindset, even you haven't got to be Superman to achieve your wildest dreams, basically.
And what's that training look like for the past 2 years, and what's that looking like at the moment as you're 2 weeks out from beginning this expedition?
So obviously you have to break it down bit by bit. You have swimming across the channel, then you have a 10,000 k bike ride, then you have Everest. So the last couple of years, as I say, it's been it started with cycling across the US. So I just flew my bike out to the US and cycled 5,000 k from Florida to California on my own. to get in the bag. So now for example, I now know that I can sustain and I can cycle for multiple weeks on end. I know my pace, I know what I can do. And then for Everest, I went to the Himalayas 9 months ago to do a couple of training climbs. Amadablam was the big one. A technical 7,000 meter peak, very close to Everest, very similar in a sense. Not as high, but harder technically. So kind of, it's just been a case of getting the tick in the box for, cycling. I know I'm capable of that. Getting the tick in the box for Everest, which now I know that I am capable of that. And then recently, the last 6 months it's focusing on the swimming mainly. Again, making myself broke by paying to go out to a training camp in the Mediterranean, an ocean channel swimming training camp, where you just swim for like 5 hours a day every day, 2 to 3 hours in the ocean, and they put you through it. You do a 6 hour qualifying swim, which you have to do to even be allowed to swim the channel. You have to do a 6 hour qualifying swim with no wetsuit, and it was just basically get that tick in the box. And now for the last 6 months, it's been very much just a regimented program, 90%, 80% swimming. And it's funny, obviously it's a funny project. There's 0 point in doing any running or hiking training or anything like that, because it's a 1 day swim, 4 month cycle, and then a 2 month running climb. Obviously, so right now for the last since 6 months, it's obviously been just basically been swimming, 80%, and then with cycling as well, to condition the legs as best as I can for cycling, because day one's the hardest. And obviously cycling is the next most important thing, because the body will be completely conditioned to cycling by the time I start the run and the trek from sea level. So if I'd done any training now for running or anything, all it would do is counteract the swimming training and eat into that training, because it would be cancelled out by the cycling anyway. So combining swimming, cycling, and with a strength and conditioning program, luckily I've got the support of like Loughborough University and the legends and all the experts there.
Yeah, it's an incredibly hard thing to train for, as you said, because of the duration of the challenge that you're taking, but also is essentially a triathlon if we look at breaking it down. If we
Yeah.
look at that first leg, that swim is obviously no easy feat. I mean, I only recently found out that more people have climbed Everest than swam the Channel, which
Oh
I
yeah,
think
a heck of a lot more. A heck of
absolutely
a lot more.
outstanded me.
Yeah, a heck of a lot more. It's quite interesting when you look at it. It's just much more technical. I think it requires a lot more skill. It requires a lot more swimming, as any triathlete will tell you. Not that I don't consider myself a triathlete really, but as anyone will tell you, so obviously swimming is often the very hardest one, unless you have been a swimmer all your life. It's the one that can go wrong. It's the one that, and especially in the Channel as well, not only is it the most technical part, not only is it the most technical discipline, it's also one of the parts, apart from Everest, where it's not in your control. The tides, the currents, everything. It's very much, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and so do you have a set date for that already, or are you actually
Yeah,
just
it's been
waiting
booked
for
in
the
for a
right
year now,
conditions?
so I was very lucky to get kind of a space even a year in advance, which is a process in itself. The 8th to the 15th of September. So that week is that's the start date. It could be any day. They'll literally tell you 48 hours in advance, 2 days before. Weather looks great in 2 days, you're swimming, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and so once we get past the swimming, you're going to be cycling across 14 countries to get to the base of Everest.
That's true. Yeah, four
How
months. Yeah.
incredibly long cycle. How are you looking at breaking that up, and how many calories are you going to be getting on board?
Luckily, obviously, the first stage being in Europe, about 6 weeks through Europe, is going to be fairly simple, similar to cycling across the US. Although that was through the deep south, so it was a little bit more remote in areas. This will be even better than that. So, because now we have like a camper van support vehicle, even though I'm still carrying all my food kit, in the spirit of being as unsupported as possible, it's still going to be very easy logistically. The first phase being Europe, with the supermarkets and bike, we are going to be cycling. I'm going to be cycling past cafes and this, that, and the other. But also, the van will be. I'll be stocked up with loads of obviously like protein, meal replacements. So because the average calorie intake will be around 5,000 a day. I'll try to eat more if I can, but I cycled across the US. which was similar. 8 to 9 hours of cycling every day for 6 weeks straight, averaging burn on average of like 4 to 5 thousand a day. So trying to eat, obviously, you're always going to be in a deficit. That's the thing. It's just probably now I have especially to begin with, I have a vehicle I can put it in. I'll probably whack some like high calorific mass gainer in there just to just to take at night to just get an extra 1,000 calories in just because I can, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we get to the last point, which is, yeah, again, no small feat, attempting to climb and summit Everest. You've obviously been to base camp before, but how do you feel about this one? Do you think this will be
Um,
the biggest challenge?
yeah, but for sure. I mean, not only is it obviously mammoth. People, a lot of people turn their nose up at Everest because it's not as technical as some of the other ones, but it's 8,848 meters high. It is, you're breathing 70% less oxygen than you are now, and it's a crazy feat. And the thing obviously I need to consider is I'm doing something that's never been done, in the sense of I'm going to be arriving having just swam, cycled, ran and trekked 12,000 k for over 7 months across the world. What state is my body going to be in? That's why, again, reinforcing this, I'm not rushing. It's not a race. It will be every day. I will be covering a lot of kilometres, but I'm not, because this truly is a marathon and not a sprint, because the whole point is to be able to arrive at Everest, not only in a okay state, but in a good enough state that I can physically climb it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one hell of a challenge when you consider how long you're going to have been, as you say, swimming and cycling for.
Yeah.
What one thing that I can only imagine you're going to need buckets and buckets of is a lot of mental strength and resilience. One, I saw Ross Edgley speak about this, and he described resilience as someone's ability to strategically manage pain. How would you agree with that?
It's quite funny. Like, I literally quote that in everything I do. So I was about to tell you that. Yeah, Ross is a big, big inspiration, obviously, and yeah, I mean that, and I've used that very angle in my kind of talks I do now, and in general, it's just basically, yeah, that's how I do it, and that's every time you do it, you learn how to do it a bit better. You just find your channels of motivation, and all you do is flick through them periodically whenever it gets tough. Remember why you're doing it, who you're doing it for. For me, it's my father. It's the charity, it's making my mum and things. And now obviously, even just knowing that I've got this many people supporting me and wanting to inspire them, that's just another. I just think of that as another string to my bow. All that is giving me is an extra bit of power to use when things get really, really shit. Which they will. But exactly the same as Ross, and yeah. I always use that quote because for me, it's the definition which makes the most sense in my eyes.
Yeah, and I guess you just talked about it then. You've obviously very fortunate that you've now got this big team behind you, and it's hopefully something that's going to gain a lot of traction. Do you see that as a bit of a burden and responsibility to bear? Or...
I think it would have its pros and cons, like you say, mate. But I think the pros will outweigh the negatives. I'm a very, very people person. I'm a extrovert. I'm a very chatty, don't shut up kind of, good in a good way kind of guy. And I love being surrounded by people and great friends, and yeah, and just interacting with people. But more than that, yeah, it might be pressure, but I think knowing that I have all this support personally, and knowing that I actually have a chance to make a difference genuinely to so many thousands of people, I'm only going to take that as a positive.
Yeah, amazing. And one thing that I came across recently, which actually blew my mind a little bit, is apparently we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are apparently negative. When you're completing a challenge which takes such a physical toll on your body as something that you're going to do, I can only imagine that those thoughts kind of intensify and increase. And I was watching another podcast with, again, Ross Edgley, and he was saying that there kind of gets to a point where if you're doing something for 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, you can adopt that David Goggins mindset of, I'm going to carry the boats, I can punch through this. You can very much do that. But when it starts to become days or weeks, or in your case, months, how do you start to control those thoughts that come into your mind, and just kind of let them almost float away?
It's the same kind of thing as I'm sure Ross would tell you. And the most important lesson probably is to compartmentalize, which is definitely the most important thing, is to compartmentalize. Break down each stage, break down each day. Don't even think about it as 7 months. I think about it as day one and then day two, and then simple as that. And if you can learn how to master that theory of compartmentalization, and taking one, literally putting one step, putting one foot in front of the other, that is a power that you get better at the more you do it, and that really helps you get through. So I think that's probably the best way.
Yeah, and a lot of the challenges that you've taken to date really push yourself to the limit. What do you why pushing yourself to the limit, and what do you think that teaches you?
It's not so much teaching; it's just every time you put yourself every time you make yourself uncomfortable and push yourself into that unknown and test yourself a bit more, you grow so much more. And like I say, for me, everyone's got their own reasons and the definitions for why they do it, and this, that, and the other. But it's a constant reminder. It kind of almost humbles you that that how precious life is every time you do something incredible, not incredible like that. Well, yeah, every time you put yourself in that position of hardship, as Ross talks about in the whole theory of resilience, and the whole theory behind it of happiness is it's more than that. It's once you put yourself through that, you find out what true happiness is by becoming further down.
Yeah, and I guess I know we've touched on Ross quite a bit here, but who would you say has been a source of inspiration, or someone that you've looked up to when training for this?
Oh, many say Ross for sure. A lot. For example, it all stems from a lot. We read a lot of audiobooks on the road across the Atlantic. Lots of great people, friends and people that I now actually speak to sometimes now and again as well, which is quite funny. Great people like obviously Goggins is one. Just reading about people experiences. Louis Rudd, amazing guy who was world record holder for walking. Obviously traverse across the Antarctic. Such an inspirational guy. So many people. Dean Stott, world record for the Pan American Highway. Stott is a legend as well. So many people. So and all these legends and all these people that you kind of know about, you just, again, when things get hard, you can just think about what they did, and you go from there. Mallory and Irvine, Hillary and Tenzing on Everest, all of these people, you just use all these names as extra motivation.
Are you the next Russ Cook?
No, absolutely not. I could never run like that man, but I'm absolutely happy and I'm absolutely fine with that. It's the most important thing I'd say to anyone that I always say. People always, people say to me, you're crazy doing this, you're crazy doing that. I'm like, the most important message as well, is every single person's completely different. Every single person has their own battle. Every person has their own dream, has their own goal, and it's all proportionate. It's not sorry, it is all proportionate. It doesn't matter whether it's your first 5K getting off the sofa or you're about to go to Everest. Guess what? It's just as important and it means just as much. And so yeah, I mean, I would never say anyone again is like better or worse. You're just different. Every trip is different. Every expedition is different. So yeah, the most important thing I would say one of the most important messages of this podcast is just never compare yourself to anyone else, because all that's going to do is make you doubt yourself. Be your own hero. Just do what you want to do.
I love it. So we've got to the point of the podcast where we ask a series of questions to everyone that comes on. The first one of those is, who's someone in your life, either past or present, that inspires you?
The obvious one for me definitely is my dad. The dad is my dad for sure. Just the general kind of work drive and the mindset and the love and the guidance and just everything. It's simply wouldn't be who I am today without it.
And what is a quote that you live by?
A quote that I live by. Wait for the aeroplane. Sorry, say that again.
It's a great
No one
quote.
wants. No one. Okay, that's fine, mate. You can go again.
Yeah. What is a quote that you live by?
For me, it's probably one that's tattooed on my arm, which I got again relevant in thinking about my dad. It's from Braveheart, ironically, one of our favourite films. But it's just every man dies, but not every man really lives, and that is something I really do go by. So no matter who you are, again, it really teaches you that how precious every moment is. And everyone can survive, everyone can exist, but to live is something different.
I love it. And then finally, what is your definition of success, and what would a happy life be to you?
My definition of success is my definition would be for an individual, for you in yourself, to get to the end of your life with as fewer regrets as possible. That's the definition of happiness. It's not money, and you're human. Everyone's going to have them, but it doesn't matter if you fail either. For me, it's fail or succeed. Get to the old deathbed, having thinking back that you have made as fewer regrets as you could possibly make. That's true success.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mitch, for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.